would like to point out Janet Kingsley, who is our CKH coach for our district. So she came here, she's been doing traction days this week, and so came to watch Logan Avenue present tonight.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you about capturing kids' hearts and the impact that it has made in our students' lives daily. First up, talking to you, we're going to have Miss Sophia Renteria from kindergarten.
Hi, my name is Sophia. I'm in kindergarten. At Logan, we always start our day with good things. Sharing good things makes me feel happy because I get to share fun and exciting things that happen in my life.
Good job, Sophia. Next, we have Oliver Brokaw of first grade.
Hi, my name is Oliver Brokaw. Before entering the buildings or classrooms, we're greeted with handshakes, high fives, hugs, or fist bumps. I like greetings because they make me and others feel good.
Good job, Oliver. Next, we have Sebastian Gonzalez of second grade.
Hello, my name is Sebastian Gonzalez. I am in second grade. At Logan, we do brain breaks after we do a lot of learning. I love when we get to dance for our brain breaks. This helps me get my wiggles out.
Next, we have Soleil Kane of third grade.
My name is Soleil Kane. I am in third grade. Every classroom has an affirmation station. These allow staff and students kind compliments. I like affirmations because they make others feel happy and special.
Next, we have Alea Jeffrey of fourth grade.
My name is Alea Jeffrey. I'm in fourth grade. At the start of the year, every classroom builds their own social contract. The social contract includes actions and expectations based on how we want to be treated and how we should treat others.
Good job, Alea. And finally, we have Adrian Garcia, fifth grade.
Hello, my name is Adrian Garcia. I am a fifth grader. CKH highlights a word for each month. Respect was the word for January. Students and staff are recognized for their exceptional display of respectful behavior throughout the building. The fifth graders nominated helped pass out certificates during the assembly.
We end our days with lunches in our classroom. Our launch today for all of us is, it's a great day to be a Logan Lion.
This has been just two final slides for you. This has been a 2-year recommitment for the staff, students, and community, and we have fully embraced it. Our next area that we are going to expand into is Lion Leaders. So we're looking for empowering our students and some student leadership. And then finally, I'm very happy to announce, thanks to Miss Janet Kingsley, we have been nominated as a National Showcase School for capturing kids' hearts. So I want to thank the staff and the community for supporting us in that. And then our last thing that we have is I want to thank you, the Board of Education, and thank you, Dr. Harder, and the rest of District Office for your support of capturing kids' hearts. And as you can see, it has made an impact in our students' lives daily. So thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, students, and congratulations on your nomination. What an honor. The next item is item 3B. Casey, do we have any public comment this evening?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. As a reminder, anyone wishing to submit public comment should complete the Request to Submit Comments form, which is available on our website. The form will need to be completed by 1 p.m. on Wednesdays, the day of the board meeting. Next item is item 4, the consent agenda. The items listed on the consent agenda are considered by the Board of Education to be routine business items. Approval of the items may be made by a single motion, second, and majority vote with no separate discussion of any item listed. Should a member of the board desire to discuss any item at his or her request, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. What are the wishes of the board?
I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, and thank you to our generous donors who continue to support public education in Emporia. The next item is item 6A, Sparkwheel.
Mrs. Judy Stanley, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching, Learning, and Student Services, who will introduce Spark Wheel, formerly of Community and Schools.
We have Kelly Stanford here to make the presentation, and then she's going to also introduce our strategist here in Emporia.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us this evening. I'm Kelly Stanford, the Chief Program Officer with Sparkwheel. I'd like to ask my teammates to stand up in the back. We have Leah Hoggett, who is at Walnut Elementary, Jennifer Martin at Logan Avenue, Michelle Nicholson is at the high school, that's Melissa Martin, our CEO, and Megan Broyles is at William Allen White, and Victoria Partridge is our VP of Communications. So we have a good showing this evening from our team. We are so proud of the team. They do amazing work here in Emporia, and as you know, have been for the past 8 years. So I just wanted to share a couple of things with you this evening. Judy let me know that you were primarily interested in hearing from student voices, so we included some of that in the materials that we provided. But just wanted to kind of start with some pictures of what's happening in the schools. I'm sure as you're in schools, you've seen some of these things, but this is kind of a sampling of things that have happened in all of the schools this school year so far. We work with our school partners to really identify the barriers that students are facing and support students and families so that students can be at school regularly in the best condition they can be to take advantage of what teachers and counselors and principals are working so hard to provide. And so we've been privileged to do that here in Emporia for the past 8 years and look forward to doing that in partnership with the district a lot longer. The next slide, if we want to go 2 up, let's just, then let's go to this one. This is a slide that sort of gives you a snapshot of the performance of our program over the last 3 years. Our program has 2 main components. The universal supports are the things available to all the students in a school. And in most of the schools where we work, a big part of that are essential needs items. So you see on this slide kind of a breakdown of what have been the different categories of essential needs that have presented at the schools over the last 3 years. You also see in that universal programmatic supports chart the kind of the scope, the instances of students served. That represents any time a person, a student or a family comes and needs support, that those numbers are the number of times that happened. So if I needed help 3 times this school year, I would be reflected in those numbers 3 times. And that's one of our data points because it really shows the scope of the need over the course of a school year. We also have shared caseload support hours. So that's the number of hours over each of the last 3 school years that our student support coordinators have provided to students receiving individualized supports, either one-on-one or in small groups. And then the caseload students goal category, every student who is on caseload being supported individually has a goal, and our staff assess their progress on that goal as we move through the school year. Every grading period, our staff shares with the principals, and I share with Judy and the district leadership the progress toward those goals at the end of each grading period. And the final one in the bottom corner there is showing you our end-of-year outcomes, kind of a graph to show you what the trends have been in different categories of our end-of-year outcomes. Our goal areas are academics, behavior, attendance, and life skills, which is a category that's really looking at those aspects of sort of soft skills, things it takes to be successful both in school and later on in the workforce and in life. And we see things change from year to year because we're dealing with different students who have different needs, but our overall performance across a 3-year span, or if we were to look at the full 8-year span, is fairly consistent over time and shows very strong results for students who are facing quite a few very significant challenges in their life. We can go to the next slide. So each year, Emporia Schools, through our program, is receiving more than $400,000 worth of supports for students and families with an annual cost share of $40,000 to the district. And so we're really proud to be able to provide a program with that kind of quality and that kind of value, because we have primary funding coming from the Department of Children and Families, TANF dollars, and then school district partners pay a cost share for each building to have the program in the district. So we're really proud to be able to bring that much value to a school district for a very modest annual cost share. And so then we get to the student voices. I won't read this to you, you have it in there, but there is one on the next slide on 8 that I think should be an audio file that hopefully down there on the speaker, if we're connected to the internet, and you don't think it will work? No? Okay, well, if you have a chance on your own to check out that sound file, it was very cute, but these are some comments from students about what Spark Wheel and their student support coordinators mean to them and the impact they're having on their life. And with that, I just want to say thank you for having us here this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have. And as always, if things occur to you after the meeting, or you have different questions about our program and other performance data, we may not be able to answer every question someone could come up with, but we can do a pretty good job. So please let Judy know, and we can provide any additional information that would be helpful to you.
Thank you so much. What questions do we have?
I do want to say how much I appreciate your social media. I love the student stories on there. You just do a really fantastic job of sharing those testimonies with us and the successes, no matter how small, and I really like that.
Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
that's to the credit of the student support coordinators and then Victoria Partridge, who leads our communications effort, and so we appreciate that means so much to you. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
I have loved Sparkwell ever since Victoria told me about it when I worked at the United Way, so it's a tremendous program.
Yep.
So I love the data points that you've shared, and it's just like so astounding, like the items that you've distributed, and how food just keeps going up.
Right.
I was curious on the referrals, just curiosity, like what kind of referrals do you make? And I don't want to, violate any confidentiality.
Sure,
I'm just
sure.
curious.
I mean, what the referrals reflects when we have a student who needs support from professionals with expertise that our staff do not have. So that could be things like mental health supports. It could be referring students, out to medical, to get medically assessed and helping perhaps get them to an appointment, that kind of thing. So it represents that piece of it when our staff, we're very aware of where our work is and when we need to access expertise and professionals in other areas. So it could be really any aspect of a student or family's life that needs that additional community expertise to come in or to be connected to so that they can hopefully move forward on a situation. And we're all, you see in this data a lot of responding to situations, but our ultimate goal is to try to help resolve some of the barriers so that over time the same barriers are not representing for families and students, and there is progress and growth for students and their families. And I could ask them to give me some specific examples, which we couldn't get to you if you'd like to have those.
And my other question is, I know that you all had worked on getting a line item in the state budget this year.
Yes.
Is that moving forward?
Okay, so yeah, it is moving forward. So I have exciting news to share on that front. We have a strategic expansion plan, and one of our priorities has been for a very long time to build out feeder patterns. So as you know, here in Emporia, there is no middle school Sparkwell program. And so we identified 10 schools across 8 or so school districts throughout the state where we currently work, but we have a gap, either at the elementary or at the middle or sometimes at the high school. And we presented to the legislature last fall this expansion plan that we have. I'm happy to report that it made it through the House budget process with strong support and only positive response from the legislators. It's with the Senate right now. State legislative budget is a complex process, and things can always go in directions you don't predict. But we are cautiously optimistic that we may get approved for that state funding, and that would allow us to offer to Emporia a program at the middle school for that same $10,000 cost share, bringing the total to the district to $5,000 and filling that gap. We have some communities where we are in all this, from K to 12, and we've really seen that when that continuum of supports is in place, the needs that students have at elementary as we know, because of the way that children develop, are different at middle school and then different still at high school. And when you have that continuum of support in place, it really strengthens the impact that these kinds of supports can have for students as they progress through their education. So fingers crossed, I'll be, keeping Judy up to speed, and we're hopeful. I mean, and if not this year, I would say we've made really strong progress and have a lot of growing support in the legislature. So if not this year, we are feeling confident that sometime in the near future, we may be able to report that we have that funding in place.
Thank you. I'll keep my fingers crossed, too.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And if any senator or legislator reaches out to anyone to ask, any support that you would feel, compelled to express would be really helpful.
So I had a question about the funding. If I understood your presentation right, we get about $400,000 worth of services, but we only pay for about $40K. Is that right?
Yes, yeah.
And so the rest of that comes from TAMP federal funding?
Most of it comes through a contract we have with DCF, and those are TANF dollars. There is also, we have a fully built-out development and fundraising team. So there are also other local dollars, like we have been funded by the United Way for a long time and other local funders, but the majority of that funding is coming through that contract with the Department for Children and Families.
And do you have any idea how the federal funding freezes and some of the stuff happening there are going to affect you?
As we understand it right now, it shouldn't impact. We are a grantee. We're not a recipient or a subrecipient. So because our status is grantee, we understand right now that there isn't going to be an impact. Again, we don't necessarily know exactly, but if funds are put to the state as block grants, we've put a lot of effort into building strong relationships in state government, both in the executive branch and on the legislative side. So we feel that if that is the way that the funding evolves to be block grants to the states, that we are well positioned to maintain our support.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Item 7A, Emporia High School boiler replacement.
Okay, Mr. Corey Nicolette, Director of Maintenance and Grounds, here to talk about the boiler at the high school.
Hello. So if you recall from about a year ago, we talked about the big book of needs. One of those was the boiler replacement for the high school. We had projected a $500,000 cost to do that. For this process, we got a hold of several different reputable companies. We got 3 companies to provide back tips quotes. And the one we're proposing going with is 5 Star Mechanical. They're actually the company that does our controls and has done several of the projects through the bond project with us. So it's a company we're already working with. We're familiar with them. And we're looking at $350,799 for the boiler purchase and install at the high school. This would be 3 units. They would take turns being the primary unit, and then they also heat the pool. So this would be tying into plumbing to the pool, and then there'll be some later secondary costs that we'll be bringing to the board as we get these approved and start going through the process of the whole package for the high school.
Thank you. What questions do we have?
Are these boilers equipped with like an alert system, like something that notifies you if it's a malfunction? I'm speaking because my dad managed White Auditorium for years and years, and I remember even in the 80s him getting calls at like 2 in the morning that the boiler was not working.
So one of the things we've done is through 5 Star, put more sensors on all the boilers so we can start seeing more of that. Prior to my arrival here, that had not been done. The function was available, but the sensors hadn't been installed for us to monitor it. This is a new high-efficiency system that is a lot more computer controlled, so the opportunity to really see what's going on is better with this than the old system, which could just give us pressures if it was on or off. This actually can tell us exactly everything that's going inside it.
What's the lifespan of a boiler, if it's well maintained through the years?
Hard to say. I would expect we would get 20 years out of these pretty easily, and we have a filtration system already in place. So that should give us more longevity out of it. The ones we're proposing are the highest efficiency that's made right now. They're up to 99% efficiency. Some of the others we looked at were in the mid-90s, which doesn't sound like much, but the more efficient it is, the less heat it produces, the longer the components last. Also, the less we pay to get the same amount of heat. So we think these are going to be a good choice. Parts are available more locally for this brand that we're talking about than some of the other brands that we've gone with. The Fulton, like I say, we've got a rep that is actually helpful in the basis of design that he came out, and when we looked at it, when we designed all this was with that kind of boiler in mind. So the system's really kind of designed around maximizing the time we'll get out of it.
Thank you. Any other questions? This is an action item.
I move to approve the 5-star mechanical bid for completion of the EHS boiler replacement project as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is item 7B, reemployment of administrators.
This is an annual recommendation that comes. You will see that when we did away with the rolling contract, then those that were recommended for a 2-year contract last year have an asterisk, so you can see where that ends. And then the other administrators are recommended for a 2-year contract if they have successfully fulfilled 3 years in the same position.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I will make a motion to approve the list of administrator contract terms and updated salary packages for administrators and classified exempt as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
I have a correction. We don't have an updated salary package. I think that was a miss copy paste.
Yeah, it should be
It is
just
just
to
the
approve
contract terms.
Then I would amend my motion to just take that reference
My
out.
apologies, yep.
And is who second the motion?
Yep, I'll
Okay.
re-second.
Thank you.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. We move on to item 8B to discuss the superintendent search process.
We have Dr. Marcia Wiesman, Leadership Field Specialist from Kansas Association of School Boards.
That seemed like a very long walk. So I think we've had an amazing 24 hours. We've worked with 7 different focus groups, starting last night and finishing not very long ago. 103 people participated in those focus groups, so pretty powerful return. And on the online survey that went out, you had 628 responses. So, you know, we can continue to look at ways to increase opportunities for voices to be heard, and we know there were some barriers in that not all voices were heard, but I think you should feel pretty good that we got a pretty good representation. So that's just part of it. So I'm going to do a little logistics first before I get into the good stuff of what we learned. But of course, everybody that heard me today knows the next thing I'm going to tell you is how amazing the student group was at 9 o'clock this morning. The high school students were prepared. They had thought about it. They were in tune with needs. Their responses aligned really well with adult responses as we went through. They were really reflective and very mature, and they were great to work with. So the first thing I'm going to do is give you a resource book. So much of what I'll talk about you can find in there, but I really am going to do a kind of higher level overview. Okay, so we divide the search process into phases, and so if you look quickly, phase one is well underway. That's that announcement establishing a timeline. We have it posted. Lindell and Casey and Lindsay in our office worked to put marketing materials together. So we have those things in place. So we're well underway in terms of that. The timeline you all looked at, so we're in place to do that and move forward. We started then that next process of identifying the characteristics, and that obviously that's what the focus groups and the online survey were doing. So if you look at phase two, that's what we've already entered into by doing that work. And so with you tonight, after I share a little information, I'll take you through a little process to fine-tune some of those. We will also want to talk through some other kinds of logistics related to like interview day, but we can do that in conjunction with the meeting where we're bringing the finalists. We don't have to get all of that done today. I kind of am a believer in the just-in-time instead of overwhelming you with too much information before you need it. And so that's when we'll talk about that interview process. And then when you look at phase 4 of the hiring process, that's the negotiations, the offering, the contract. So there is a phase 5, but that comes after you've offered a contract and hired somebody, and that's when the new superintendent and the board, we come together and I facilitate a process with you to make sure everybody's on the same page with goals and expectations. And some of the information that is gleaned through this process of focus groups ends up being really good information as you're looking forward, because it kind of, by having all these voices heard, we're able to pick up on some needs being expressed by the community. So one of the things I'm going to give you right now is a summary of comments, and this is a AI-generated summary of 400 comments that came on this survey. But what I want to say to you about a summary, when we summarize all comments that were made from all stakeholder groups, the example I shared with the focus groups is comment 99, the school district needs to be run like a business. They need to look at functioning more like a business. Comment 100, school districts are not businesses. They should not be run like a business. So, that happens throughout. So when it's aggregated summaries like that, you don't always have as useful of information. So one of the things Lindsay in our office is helping me do is, she's doing all the hard work, I just get to talk about it, is kind of disaggregating those comments out so we can kind of get a better sense of what's coming from different stakeholder groups. So I think, take this for what it's worth now. It's like a 30,000-foot view, but it's like anything else. When you're looking at the mean, you start to lose meaning as you go to the center. Like I said, logistics, I'm going to give you some more paper now. And this is something that we'll revisit the next time I come, but I want you to have these salary comparisons just so you have a little time to kind of digest them. And that's for your information, so as candidates come in, you have some context to have those kinds of conversations, and there's lots of other context required with that as well. Okay, so I will be following up by sending you the full report from the online survey with all the comments. I do need to redact non-elected personnel when that shows up in a comment, and sometimes words that we don't want to publicly say. But I think they were helpful, and so I think what's interesting to know is the largest group of respondents on the online survey were parents, okay? The second largest group was students, numerically, yeah. So I thought that was very interesting, and of the people who responded, it was 100% correlation between length of time in the district and number of participants. The people who have been part of Emporia Public Schools the longest responded the most, and those with the shortest tenure had the fewest responses. So I think that's valuable as we look at this data. And so I'm just, once again, giving you high-level responses, but when we asked people to rank and order their priorities of personal qualities that they would like to see, the highest one was a kid's first personality, followed not too far behind by personal strength to do what's right regardless of circumstances, and then a little bit of space below in transparent, a little more space, and approachable. So those were kind of the top four. And you'll get more detail related to this than you can digest. Okay, question number 2. So those were personal qualities. So leadership qualities. These rankings were a little more tightly distributed. So the highest was proactive, forward thinker. And next was community-oriented and involved within the community. And then innovative, creative, and an out-of-the-box thinker. Like I said, these are pretty tight, so there's not like an real obvious breaking point. And then efficient manager of resources and budget, and then understands and recognizes diversity in the district, came out right in the middle. And then visionary, can build and implement vision for the 21st century. So those are your top ones. The lowest ranking one on the survey was instructional leader. So, okay, when we talk about priorities of experiences, so we've talked about personal qualities and then leadership qualities. So for the experiences, what ranked the highest was a previous superintendent experience, followed by experience with diverse socioeconomic demographics, and then followed by diverse race demographics, and then came experience with curriculum and instruction. Okay, so those are the top ones with that. And then, like I told you, I'm Let me see if I was right when I said 400 comments. Okay, I'm sorry, it was only 381. But, people didn't just go in and click buttons. They made the effort to say some things, and mostly pretty on point. So then that final question is, what's that single quality that if you're separating, two qualified candidates that you would like to see? So we kind of call it a separating one. I think of it as really a way to prioritize. And number one is honest, trustworthy, strong integrity. And then kids first, student-centered. And then positive personnel support and development. And then acknowledges and addresses issues related to diversity. Then transparent, flexible, and then build relationships. Then we get into communication and advocate, at state and federal levels, communication skills. So this will all be data that you can use. So I was telling Linda, I always think I can type fast enough that when I finish with a focus group an hour before a meeting, I'm going to have a nice report for you. But since I dropped typing in high school, I never pull that off. But 103 people showed up in our groups, and I saw a whole bunch of them out here. Really positive, engaged participation in the groups, starting with that community group last night. And one of the things that came out of last night is, hey, one of their top priorities is, hey, there is a core committed group of community members and parents that really care about this district and are willing to work towards it. So everything that was said in a focus group, I will be giving to you in this report. But right now, I'm just going to give you kind of these top ones. So under the category of important leadership and personal qualities, so not separating it out like in the survey, and the way I just describe it is, think about what you think the next superintendent needs to have to be most effective in Emporia Public Schools. So could be knowledge, skill set, personality traits, experience. Okay, I don't think I've ever had one weighted so high, but in a broader category of leadership skills, strong communication, transparent, and believes in values shared leadership. So my ratings don't have context right now, but if you remember that's a 25 when I tell you the next number, you kind of get the relative prioritizing. The next number is 17, and that it overlaps, which these typically do, but transparent with decision-making, setting direction for the district and communication with adults and students. So that came through pretty strongly. And then they're a little closer together with forward-thinking, innovative, experience improving low-performing schools of similar size and diversity, and honest, approachable, and then won't micromanage, trust staff, value teacher knowledge and experience, not top-down. So that's kind of how those rated. The next question, which is always fun to ask, is what are all the really great things about Emporia Public Schools that need to be protected and valued and honored? And 6 out of 7 focus groups, the first thing that was said was diversity. And on the weighting then, at 22, and then the next highest weighting is at 11. So that tells you how strongly that was viewed as one of the best things about Emporia. And then the next one was access and collaboration with 2 secondary institutions, ESU and Flint Hills Tech. So those were the top in that category. Of course, we asked the flip, what are the challenges that a new superintendent needs to be prepared to tackle when they come in? Now, the ranking wasn't quite as high, but diversity is always, or tends to be listed as a challenge as well, which is not unusual. But the highest, again with a 25, is teacher and staff retention and competitive wages, and then poor ranking in student achievement in math and ELA, and concern us that student proficiency is below 50 percentile, or 50% in the state. And sorry, I didn't have a chance to check these numbers, so I'm taking them at face value. But with a graduation rate of 91%. So that definitely was powerful, because after that, the weight drops quite a bit. So you will get that. But then again, asking that separating question or prioritizing question, and by now it makes sense that these are tighter. And so builds relationships with students and staff and sees different perspectives, had the highest weighting. And then diplomatic skills, good listener, honors legacy, makes community feel valued, strong interpersonal skills, transparent, open, honest, kind of all combined for the second highest. So those kind of dominated. I tried to use the focus groups also as an opportunity to communicate to stakeholders what the process looks like. So explain to them that as you finish the process tonight, this is information that's used to screen applications. It's used to make sure calls to references ask the right questions to get at the right kind of information. When applicants contact me and say, hey, tell me about Emporia, not only this kind of data, but just the feel of the 24 hours and working with people gives me lots of information to share with people to help try to get a good fit. Then as you develop your interview questions, we'll cross-check carefully to make sure your questions get at what you determine you want those characteristics to be. And then also that final ranking after you finish interviews, once again, checking to make sure that you're evaluating in relationship to that criteria. So once again, in a nutshell, that's where we go with it. So my question is, are you ready now to walk through a little process and see where we go? Okay, so it'll be the 4 questions, and the first one again, sorry, is
Paul, can you make sure sound is on?
where is Oh, Paul's in the closet, okay. So the first question is, when you think about the characteristics that the next superintendent will need to be most effective, what do you think those are? So could be knowledge, skills, experience, or like personality traits. So I'm going to make a loud noise tearing this paper off. And this always goes much faster with you all because there are only 7 of you, and is there only 6 here tonight? I didn't count. Okay. So we're faster at criteria. So as soon as you think you have something in mind, because we'll go through these first 3 questions, and then I'll let you come back and revisit, because sometimes responding to question 2 and 3 triggers response that you wish you had had for 1. Okay, so is someone ready with a characteristic they think is necessary for the superintendent to be effective in the new context of the world that will be as you start a new year.
Effective communicator.
Okay? And I'm going to kind of see what responses are. I may come back to you and ask you to drill down a little bit on that, depending on what we get from other people, so we know what that's going to look like when we're asking about it. Okay?
I like a decisive quality. I don't want someone who waffles whenever they have to address something.
Okay. Decisive.
I may term it differently, but a collaborative leader.
Okay. So collaborative with stakeholders, Board of Education, all of the above.
All of the above.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave it just to that collaborative. Do you want one more, let's see, in categories related to communication and decision making? I'm putting words in your mouth, but I just kind of want, what are the areas in which you'd like to see that collaboration with all of those stakeholder groups? So it can be and I don't mean this is just Brant answering. Anybody to respond, but collaborative in decision making, communication, messaging as a sub-element of communication, determining vision and action steps. If you're not prepared or don't know yet.
I mean, you're pretty much saying
Can you just write
everything
all
we
that
want.
down?
Yeah, like everything.
And
Just make
all
a
of,
paragraph.
okay.
Kind of all of the above approach, I
Okay,
think is what we're
we'll
going
just
for.
say, what's the acronym for all of the above for everything? And I did tell the groups, we are working from a model that says that you can get the ideal perfect person that does walk on water, because that's how we get as close to it as possible, and then reality will set in and we'll find out we can't get absolutely everything, but if we start with ideal, we get as much closer to it than if we already start to think about what might be there. It's what do we want to find. So I'm not going to add any more modifiers to this. I'll keep that there. Okay?
I like the students first, but I also want to point it in the direction of accountability.
Okay. Connected to students first? Okay. And,
In regards to the student achievement.
okay, that's just what I was going to ask you. Is this related to proficiency? Okay. So students first with accountability. And I think that came through enough through all the groups looking at proficiency that we can really be descriptive with that. Okay.
I think one characteristic would be a leader who inspires greatness.
Okay.
Especially, I know, so yes, walks on water.
Yeah, so we want the ideal. Leadership that inspires greatness. I had, in one group, leadership that inspires students, and then also leadership to develop internal leaders and develop leaders. So I think this is the big umbrella concept for those.
I'd like to see experience. Sorry, I'd like to see experience. Someone who's probably dealt with a district of similar size and with as many buildings, because we actually do have quite a few buildings when you think about it. So it'd be nice to have someone who's dealt with something on our scale before.
Okay, so that was a common theme that came through the focus groups. So let me ask, when you say experience in a district of similar size, are you looking for experience in functions in a district of similar size, or experience in the superintendent seat in a district of similar size, or experience in the functions that they would have responsibility for?
I think
Emporia State, Flint Hills Technical College, and I think that filters down into our school system too.
Okay, so community values education?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt for just a minute, but we did have a problem with the mics, and they all turned on, so if you could turn your mic off. There we go. He just had to reset it, sorry.
Okay. Anything else you want to put on this list? Okay. Now, not to put words in your mouth, but what I think of is, and traditions resulting from that, is that true statement or not where you wanted to go? Okay. 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 And that did come up in our focus groups, and we had some people who, a few people that were like the third, or had the third generation in schools. Okay. So, a lot more of that than people that were relatively new. Okay?
One of the things that I've always thought has been great about our schools are, and I probably don't know an easy way to say this to write it, so I defer to you to summarize, but we offer like so much to our students in terms of the career pathways, the extracurriculars, just the student activities and the support for student activities. I mean, I don't remember anything like that when I was at Lansing High School. And have never really seen a school district, and I lived in a lot of them because I was a military brat, but I never had a school that was quite like ours, if that makes sense. I don't know how to say that.
Well, it totally does, because it came through in most of the groups, and the community group last night, but the kids were probably the most eloquent about it this morning in terms of describing the opportunities. Now, the one that got my attention most, in addition to they were talking about the CTE pathways and the opportunity for credit, for summer classes at Allen County, and they were talking about, the partnerships with ESU and with Flint Hills Tech, as well as athletics, activities, JAG, AVID, but the one that got my attention was glass blowing. I want to see that.
I never had anything like that in high school. I got hosed. Like,
Okay. But in various ways, there was something related to this in every focus group. So I can pull some of those examples if that kind of reflects what you're meaning. Okay? All right.
I'd say we have some really great teachers. We just had one recognized for STEM, and there's many more. So I think that's something to be excited about and to be proud of.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to capture?
I'm sorry, I stepped out. This was for our schools, right? The strength of our
Yes,
schools. And we do have really diverse schools.
Okay. And that was, as I said before when I did that, 6 of the 7 focus groups, when asked about the good things in Emporia Public Schools, said diversity first as something that they thought was really positive. So you're wanting to add that? Okay. And different kinds of diversity were described, yeah. Okay.
And I do want to clarify, I want to include our staff too.
Okay.
Not just teachers, but I know we have a lot of classified staff that go above and beyond every day.
Okay. And I almost asked that, but I thought I'd wait and see where we went before I put it in there. And that did come through strongly with all our groups. Okay, I'm going to take you to the next one, and then we'll go back and look at these 3 again and see if something else was triggered. So the next one is, what are the challenges facing the school district, and that the new superintendent needs to be prepared to tackle. And so what I might suggest with that is, obviously your school district sits in a community, and so sometimes those challenges may not be directly cause and effect but from the school district, but community challenges clearly have an impact on what you do, and strategies are needed to tackle those to be able to, reach your vision of what you want to accomplish. So when I say that, you might open your mind to that broader idea of challenges in the school district or community that will impact the school district or could impact the school district.
I'll jump in. There's a lot of poverty in our community. A lot of people don't see that sometimes, especially folks, like me, who maybe are in a higher income bracket, because we live in our own bubbles. But I did legal aid for many years in our community, and there is a lot of high poverty in our community. And I think that's a challenge because that causes issues with, getting students to school, the issues that happen at home that prevent students from being able to be at school and just focus on learning and excelling. And I think that's unique everywhere, but it's something we have here.
Okay. And so we did hear that in terms of increasing numbers of low SES and a recent loss of a major employer in the community, kind of adding to that. And so allocation of resources are impacted within the school district as a result. So that was kind of some of what came out of our groups.
I would add, we just have a declining enrollment, but also made more urgent by the fact that one of our major employers is winding down, and we don't quite know what the impact of that might be.
Okay. So declining enrollment and some unknowns in terms of what could happen. Okay. And unknown future related. Okay.
I do want to see student achievement improved. Also, an issue with chronic absenteeism that I know is not just our community, but many communities across the country, but those are the same struggles we have here.
Okay. And since I'm holding the mic, I'll share my soapbox, but I think it's always important when we're looking at chronic absenteeism that we look at it for the issue it is of itself, that if kids are not there, they can't learn, but even more importantly, that we examine the causes, because those are the real root reasons that need to be addressed. So this becomes important in multiple facets. Sometimes I lose track of where I'm writing. I may be creating brand new words that have never been seen before.
I think staff retention's a concern,
Okay.
Both certified and classified.
Okay. And once again, definitely reflected. So staff as a whole. So I'll go ahead and ask the question, because what often followed in our groups is the recruitment piece as well. Do you see that as a challenge as well? And I know your district's been working on those issues. Okay. So I think that can be very appropriate, because we know the correlations between board governance and student outcomes. And so I usually don't frame it that way, but there absolutely is a research-based correlation between board governance and student outcomes, and board development and student outcomes. So do you have?
Well, one of the things we struggle with that I think that can tie in some of those is being able to accurately communicate actual information with our community.
Okay. Okay.
An example would be at our last meeting, we talked about this building and the issues we're having with it, and maybe what we're going to need to do in the future, and it got turned into, we are spending $1 bajillion for no reason on what, and it's just like, there's issues with getting accurate, factual information to the public, and social media does not help with that.
Okay. And that's a big one. Okay.
I have two that I think are important. The health insurance for staff. We've faced increasing costs on that basically the entirety of the time I've been on the board, and so we've had this issue run up where we, renew contracts, we adjust salaries, kind of give the equivalent of a cost of living raise, and then by the time your health insurance premium goes up, it ate through the raise. Like you're making less than you did, even with the raise, right?
Okay.
And that's kind of a systemic issue that's pretty broad. But also, and I don't know that I think I'm not saying this and that I have information or data that makes me think it's, a roaring issue, but I feel like student behaviors are something I've heard a lot of people in the community talk about, and I don't have, on the floor perspective because I'm not in the buildings seeing it, but I know it's been mentioned to me a lot, and I've had a lot of veteran teachers talk to me about how they feel like it is more now than it was in years past in their career.
BC and
Yeah.
AC.
I don't know how true that is, but that's what I've heard.
And we hear that consistently, not only across the state, but across the nation. I think there's some reality. Interestingly enough, that was a factor that came up, but it didn't rise to a high impact factor. So I don't mean to say in any way that it's not significant, but it looks like within your stakeholder groups, and so what I just said may not be as true as of the community group last night, but within the other groups, it was something that was mentioned, but it didn't get some of the priority that some other things. So kind of processing that's interesting.
I think one unique challenge that we're going to be, seeing in the next year for our new superintendent is that we have a lot of attrition in our DST, right? Or is it, in our DST. So a lot of our senior leaders have retired or are moving on. And so we have a lot of, new employees joining our leadership teams.
Okay. So, okay, yeah, so that was framed several ways throughout the day and was mentioned kind of some loss of institutional knowledge, some loss of leadership for new people coming on. I'm trying to help me with the words and how
about
you...
green? The green team.
Okay, so... okay.
Because, I also,
significant changes in leadership.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
I also think...
Turnover,
I also think, it could also be some opportunity too, though I'm feeling the loss right now, so.
Yeah. And that is absolutely true. Often what's good on the flip side is a challenge. What's a challenge has some silver lining for some benefits. It's not usually pure. These things cross lines. Okay. But on a given day, this is going to look more like a challenge than on another day when things come in and there's not some institutional history. Okay. You want to now kind of think about what you have for characteristics that are desired, what's good, and challenges to add to any of those lists.
I would add something. Jeremy kind of sparked it when he said, we sort of have a high low-income population, but I think as a school district, we've really invested a lot in our community through capturing kids' hearts, raising, our minimum wage to $15 per hour, doing the reduced price copay. So I think we've also made significant investments to support our community as well.
Okay, so does this capture significant investments in community impacting issues of socioeconomic status? Because I didn't want to go quite to poverty because that may be a different definition. Okay. Okay, anything else to add? Okay, so this last one, and then we'll go back and prioritize, is that one separating factor. So let's say we have two candidates, both are they have all the characteristics that you want, but different characteristics to different degrees. This one's really approachable. This one has significant experience in increasing student achievement, okay? This one has some experience, but this one has more, but this one's a little less approachable. Okay, just 2 examples of characteristics. When you think about the characteristic that is most important for the next superintendent to have to be effective, so it doesn't mean the others aren't important, but what's the one that you would say is the most important? And this is hard, yeah, because, and prioritizing is important, because if everything's top priority, nothing's top priority, and you've got to start somewhere. So sometimes another thing I suggest when you're thinking about that is, what does the new superintendent need to be prepared to take on in their first 100 days? That may help give you an idea of what you want to make sure that they have. So it's already got to be there. It's not something that you're hiring for potential. If it's something that you think is critical to be taken on immediately, you want to already see it there in strength.
I would say students first. I feel like we try as a board to make decisions with that always being the first kind of piece of that puzzle, so.
Okay. So I'm going to ask each one of you to just give me one of these. So if yours is up there, just say that.
Well, if you truly, like you said, the first 100 days, right?
It's just one lens to apply.
It would be all about establishing trust and strong relationships right out of the gates.
Okay. Okay, and I like the way you built that rationale for that. Okay. Okay.
Thank you. I don't know what my deal is. Microphone. Sorry, Casey. You can just whack me after the meeting.
You got a friend here.
And it kind of ties into a lot of what we've talked about when you are dealing with struggles and you are dealing with, it's sometimes hard to communicate, but I think just being thick-skinned, just
Okay.
you, and we've learned that. We learned that. You have to get very good at just, and you listen to people and you do, and you respect them, but you've got to be thick-skinned. Yes, if that's, yeah.
What did
He
you
said tough.
Tough, okay.
But that makes it sound like we're looking for a biker dude, so we'll go with thick skin.
Okay.
No, they could apply.
I'll kind of go back to experience. I want to see someone with the skills that they need to be able to hit the ground running in this kind of job. Open to what that experience is, probably would favor prior or current superintendent experience, but I don't want to foreclose anyone from, throwing their hat in the ring.
Okay. I'm making it harder and harder for you to be able to read it. If you need me.
I think mine would be inspires others to be great.
Okay. Sometimes I hear, I guess as a corollary to that, is everybody's better when they're around. They lift people up. Okay.
Well, as I was trying to grapple with it, some thoughts that came to mind is inspirational, motivational, but I also like the trust building, I think, which can capture some of that other thing, but the trust, the relationships, I think are extremely important.
Okay. So you want to keep
Yeah.
that one as yours? Okay. And I forgot to really pay attention to who told me what. So is that everybody? Okay, thank you. as a former math teacher, 6 minus 1, that's hard to come up with. Okay, so students first, establish trust and relationship, thick skin, experience with the skill set to hit the ground running, and inspires others to be great. Quite honestly, I don't think we need to do another step. If you all kind of look at that, and if we think there's kind of consensus that those would be, the boiled down characteristics. Like I said, you're going to get a lot more information of other things to consider for all those things that we're talking about. But that is kind of the 30,000-foot perspective from your role. Any discomfort from anybody that something might be missing that's critical? Like I think, Grant, what I heard you saying is if this is in place, then this is in place. And okay, well, then we can stop right there. I'll add this to the report, and with 103 participants, it's going to be a lot of pages for you to read when I send that back to you, but I'll add this information, and I thank you very much for your time, and that's really all we have to do tonight, and when I see you next time, we'll pick up the other tasks. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you so
Marsha.
much. We'll just take a moment.
That noise would be the boiler system.
Yeah, okay, well,
We're not going to advertise that.
Lindell and Jared must have done something.
I asked if he would go outside and just make sure there's nothing outside.
Thank you. Good job. So let's move on to item 8B, board policy updates.
Okay, we have Mrs. Pam Stranathan, Assistant Superintendent of Business Operations, and Mrs. Casey Jones, Board Clerk. Lillian Lingenfelter was also involved, but she's not here tonight.
Oh, does he have to?
Oh, there. Sorry. It's covered with tape. It's not that I can't see blue. Just to be fair, why I can't see it. So, all right. This, probably out of this one, this has been one of our biggest ones. So now, after, just to recap, we had KSB look over all of our policies. And so now what we're getting is our December and then June, where that's the 2 times a year they do the updates. And so this is kind of capturing all of that with our weather and the holidays, and then having time for Casey to put these together for you all. And then also on top of that is having time for the committee to be able to look these over. So they have been vetted through the committee, and the committee has looked at that and also gave feedback. One of the things on what I'll do is I'll go through each of these in the order they're in, and if you have questions, if it's just language, it's just some small stuff that's in there, but if there's bigger questions that are in there, I'll kind of recap a little bit, so won't go in a lot of detail with it. Also, Erica has been working on some of this, because if you noticed in there were 3 that dealt with the nurse and students and meds. And then if on KN in reference to complaints, Jared also can walk through some of those that we've had to, and look at some of those if anybody has any questions. So if we start off with ID, You'll see where ID had mostly just language. There were just some changes in small, like superintendent designee and licensed. The next, if we go to IF, this had a reference to on the IF with textbooks and materials and the request of those, and it got into having a bigger discussion about if determining the challenging, it got down to the challenging of materials, if you look at that section there, where, and also the repeat, because where you see people challenge materials and then they keep coming back or a different group brings it back, so, and referencing to your committee. JGFGA, that, what we're seeing there, the addition there was under the training in reference to the administration of those EpiPens and things along that line.
I did have a question on this one.
Yep, go ahead.
So I was looking to see that, staff would be trained. Do we identify a certain number of staff per building to be trained, so you have some overlap maybe to who can administer this?
For the safety groups, yes. For when it comes to the opioid, that piece is mainly just the school nurses and then the director of healthcare services. And then for that specifically. Then when you look at the other pieces for the antihistamine and that type of thing, that would be also the school nurse and then the secretaries in the buildings, if that makes sense.
I think with the changes they've made in this is the discussion Erica and I have, since she oversees the nurses, is one of the things that's, this is a bigger discussion now, since it's in here on training and what that training would look like in the future with staff. All right, moving on to JH. This references to students that are virtual and that are participating in activities, and it references to the fees that now can be requested, as long as the fees are the same fees that you apply to every student in the district. You can't just have made-up fees for students that are virtual. KK, we're seeing building disposal. Gets into more disposal of district property, and what you'll see there is they keep up, I'd say upgrading the language for the building disposal with the number of days, and I'm assuming this one will probably change every year, because that's what we're seeing so far on how to get rid of a building in your district. BDA was just...
I did have a question on this one.
Sorry,
comment.
go ahead. No, you're fine.
This is just a clarifying question. So the way I read this sort of means that if we had this information when we were trying to sell Maynard, we wouldn't have had to go to the legislature for Maynard since it wasn't a K through 12 building.
Maynard missed the mark. It was Kansas Avenue that we had to do that.
I was asking about Maynard. So I was asking, because that wasn't a K through 12 building, and this says it has to be a K through 12 building, to go to the legislature for approval for disposal?
So
I was just curious if it's just, because I was reading it as saying, if it's students were in the building from K through 12, you have to go to the legislature, but that was a pre-K building. So so just for I was just seeking clarity.
So one of the things, because I had checked on that, it's any building that would be used that house students for educational purposes. So that's probably something they need to change, is to get that back into a pre-K, because you're right. If we had a building that was not K through 12, but what they're indicating is it's a building that's used in that capacity, so they kind of left off the pre. So
I might ask you a question you don't know the answer to, but then what if it was a building that was previously used but isn't anymore?
So it's still school district property,
Right.
and they would request that all property would come, and so they would have them.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
BDA was just a few pieces of language in there. I think the superintendent did, may and necessary. Then CC, this is the org chart, and Lindell, I'll throw his name out here. I didn't tell him I was going to do that, but he's in the process right now of putting that on the website and rearranging that, so putting the org chart up on the website. A lot of times you'll see it, it'll have the superintendent, and then underneath it, you'll see where it'll have the org chart underneath that. So, whereas before, it was just a requirement. If somebody asked for it, you could give them a copy of it, and now it says in there where we can put it up on. CG, evaluation of, do what? Oh, yeah, CD, sorry, we're deleting that one. And then CG was the one where it gets into the evaluation of administration and personnel, and getting that language in there so that it's not just vague from district to district, that it's following the same as what you would see with your teachers.
I hate to be that person, but there's a typo. Under evaluation of administrative personnel, there's a the that's a te.
I just saw the same
Yeah.
thing at the
So I
same
looked at that and
time.
I'm like, oh, that gets in your mind.
I'll get
Yeah.
that fixed.
Thank
It's
you.
not bad, -1. No. And CGI, that one's retiring. CNA gets into the preservation of documents, legal documents, maintaining them when you get into situations to where the courts are wanting you to keep documents, and we should preserve those and keep those. So that changed up the language. It used to be destroying documents, and now we're preserving. So DE was a small language, I believe, yeah, an employee who reports evidence of gross misconduct. It was the language down at the bottom there, and then referencing to KN under reporting fraud and under the whistleblowers. DFAC, that gets more in now to our cybersecurity, and then mandatory disclosures, which is referencing, when you look at that, towards federal grants and people that are doing work for you, they have to disclose if they've had any misconduct with any federal grants or money, which I'm still not sure how you get that information because there's no clearinghouse for that. So, and then also it talks about whistleblowers protections and that one again. DFH is probably one of the biggest ones they've added to this in reference to fundraising activities. The overall language to that is putting language in there to protect two things, the students from going door to door and how we're requesting the students to do that. And then the other thing is it's making a stronger statement now, and they do use stuff like GoFundMe and things where if those are done in capacity for the school district, that the property becomes part of the school district, and so do the funds, and it can't go into personal accounts, which has not been in any language in the past. So I think that's been the grayest area for fundraising, is trying to navigate, you know, if you're doing a GoFundMe, is that for you for your classroom, or is that? So now anybody doing things that are representative of the district for the district purpose, it would have to go through and be accounted for. So
I'm so happy to see this policy.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine how much work it was to just craft this one. So I have a couple clarifying questions. So sometimes it's not about like raising money. So for example, it could be like a canned food drive. And so sometimes students might be incentivized to bring 20 cans of food, because I did like seeing in here that like fundraising couldn't be tied to a grade or extra credit or something. Would that also apply to like canned food drives as well?
And then I think also where you're going with that, because sometimes there's this feeling of obligation, you know, that somebody brought 10 cans, so I should bring, 10 cans. My kids used to go just destroy my pantry, and I knew when it was fundraising time because it was empty. And so I think those are the practices and the procedures that are the next discussion that the district would need to do, and put those practices and procedures in place so that this is the umbrella, but the overline of, what extreme are we going to with the food drives and the expectations and things along that line, so.
Yep, thank you, that's great. And then my next one was, and I wasn't sure if this fit in here, but At the beginning of the school year, teachers will at times have an Amazon wish list that I know many of us like to contribute to. Does that fall into this, or is that,
Yeah, if it's applying to their classroom and they're doing any level of advertising or publication in reference to needs for their class, and that would fall under that they, and, most people are doing that for their classroom, so it's, it's in there. One of the things I know that's very successful is kind of doing, just like a textbook request, you would run through a request for a fundraiser or a request for, if it's something small like that, just so there's documentation that we would have in the district that these occurred, so that nobody's reporting that somebody's not, following what the policy says. And it's not that they couldn't do those. They just have to understand that they can't take any financial gains off of those if they're advertising it for USD253 classroom, and they could not, it can't be personal property of theirs. It would have to become in their room and used in their classroom, and so I know.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, because if they move grade levels, or they move to a new building, technically would they have to leave?
They could take that stuff with them.
But if they left the district, they couldn't.
Yeah,
if they went to
they should
another-
leave it, yeah.
Wow.
I know.
Are they gonna, I don't,
Yeah.
in a perfect world, no one would have to ask for those things, right? We would be able to give them oodles of money and they could do whatever. But do you think anyone's gonna offer any workarounds?
Well,
Any ideas for them? Because this is gonna be a really big education piece then for our teachers coming this fall.
Yeah.
Especially new teachers, because that's kind of the precedent that has been set for so many new teachers is, hey, this is a great way to get your classroom and everyone wants to donate and help you. So I just don't know, maybe we can come up with an idea that isn't subverting policy, but is something that we can come up with to help them.
And I do
do
know,
that.
I do know principals, and I'd have to go in and look, but I do know by looking at the budgets and that the principals are offering for new teachers, they help support them. They give so much money to them to help buy supplies and get their classrooms, up and running, so. But I think, I think it's something also for further discussion. I think this right here is the bigger umbrella to protect the bigger items in that, where that goes from there on the practices and procedures. Once again, that would be something that we would need to look at.
I think I can understand the purpose of the policy, but I don't like the idea of, if I'm a new student teacher or a teacher and I say, hey, I want to get all of my first grade students the best crayons possible, and you crowdsource it on your Facebook. I feel like you shouldn't get in trouble for that. We just need a process to catch that information.
Correct.
And that I think I could get behind. I guess my question is, when do we have to implement this? Could we perhaps carve this out, work on that process, come back and do it all together? That way we don't kind of blow people up in between. Does that make sense?
Well, and I think to keep in mind, it's not like anybody's going to get in trouble for it.
Right.
And right now, I guess you would say it's kind of on the honor system with people in reference, and even when the policy passes, that the communication needs to be there, and it has guidelines in here about making sure the technology works with the district. And that's probably one of the things we see is that people will do a grant or do something, and then they'll get technology that doesn't match up. Or they'll go ahead and purchase out of their pocket something that doesn't match with the system. And so, or they'll get a grant and then they'll get iPads, and then there'll be a discussion on whether that's their iPad or the district's iPad, but they use the district's to get the grant to get the iPad. So I think, yes, it's a bigger procedure. I think this just protects the district in reference to the things that have that gray area. So I do think the procedures need to be put in place.
I hear what you're saying, I'm thinking the bigger stuff like iPads and grants, yes, absolutely should be covered in this. I just worry about the starting off the school year And, there's the Amazon wish list. And I just think it's a great way for families who want to buy something can participate. And because we are so lucky in this district not to have to pay for school supplies. And so that's just a nice way, I think, for families to be able to support also.
Absolutely.
And so I'm just worried that this policy could be interpreted and enforced as stopping that from moving forward. And I can't support this one. If it could be interpreted that no Amazon wish lists could be purchased, it could be used.
And I don't think, keep in mind, it's not, and it's just like it says, this policy is not intended to prohibit. It's not, nobody's telling them they can't do it. They're just, I think, Jeremy, you said it very well, there just needs to be an accountability for it, just so nobody's saying you can't do the Amazon wish list. You can't, you just need to make sure that you're not doing it for your own personal, like you're not doing the Amazon wish list and then you're getting all these crayons and then half of them you're taking home to your own kids. Or you're, I think that's the part where it just gets to be gray. And so I think it is a bigger conversation as to what that practice is going to look like on that reporting side of that.
Yeah, when I worked at Legal Aid, we actually had a policy that if you, just a standard policy for KLS statewide, if you ever bought something for your office or anything like that, technically that became part of KLS. And, we had a secretary once who decided to get a really fancy desk. And when she had to move on, we joked that maybe we were going to keep the desk. We didn't, but that's a very common, what you're talking about is a common thing you have to have in every organization. What I would prefer to do, and I'd kind of, pivot to the board when I'm done, I think we should carve this policy out because it requires a rule that says there is a process to be able to do it with authority, but we don't have that process yet. Does that make sense? I feel like if we're going to implement that, then we should give people the tools to be able to do something as simple as buy crowdsourced crayons for their students, right?
Yeah, maybe we can certainly look at but remember, tonight is our first reading, so it's not like we have to vote tonight.
A really good point, but yeah, I would support Jeremy that just needs a little bit more finesse.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I wanted to get you off the hot seat. Sorry, Pam.
No, you're fine. No, I totally understand, and this is new. I mean, this is a new policy that's been thrown in there, so.
Yeah, it's just I feel like if I were that teacher, I have the ability to do this. I'm going to ask my boss how to do it, and if they can't tell me, that's not cool,
right.
Yep. But that said, I'm cool with passing everything else we reviewed. I don't think there's any reason to wait on that.
It's the first reading, though.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. I forget we do it in twos. I feel like we have to do it now.
Okay, moving to ICA. ICA, you're going to see this comes in with student surveys protecting anything that has to do with grants or, pilots, projects that would be in the district. It just adds that language, which is the same language that the district has to use in reference to surveys with students. And then IDACA, that's a line deletion in there. And then JGFGAA, I'm going to turn that one over to Erica.
We now have stock supply of, and I mentioned it a little bit before, so stock supply of epi and I'm looking albuterol for our students, and those are housed in the nurse's office, all the nurses' offices, as well as our Director of Healthcare Services area. And so with that highlighted part, we need to add in there stored in the student handbook. So just as where that information is stored in the logistics of where how all that is done. Questions about that? Training is done by our school nurses and then our Director of Healthcare Services. And as Pam mentioned before, that is a part of our current training, but we are going to ensure that is a part of our ongoing onboarding training for our staff, and that's that annual training. Questions about that one?
And JGFGBA, that one is adding in. Now we have inhalers, and epinephrine is in that one, whereas before there was not the language there. Plus they took out the written parental and authorization. So what you see there is it loosens up a little bit on the inhalers. Also, you'll see in that one, over-the-counter medications, you'll see a section to that and misuse of medications. And then KN is complaints. One of the sections that you'll see added there, it's pretty much the same, except now you will see complaints against the superintendent and the process for that.
I have a clarifying question. So when it says like issue a complaint, there's not a form, it's just a letter, an email, but there's no formal form, is there, or is there?
So there's a form, and yes, that, did you want to share anything on that one, or, but yes, there is a form, sorry. Yes, there is. Yes, there's.
I was just
there's
curious.
Yeah, there's a form for that. And that wraps up.
So I do have one question about this, because it says you file a complaint, but not later than 20 days after the complainant becomes aware of the violation, unless it's ongoing. But if there was a complaint filed that was 20 days after, it was untimely, but it's not ongoing, would the board still be notified of that?
I'm going to defer this direction on that.
Does that question make sense? Because if it wasn't ongoing, then it's untimely, but I
Right.
wouldn't know unless someone told me, right?
Right.
I think our goal is to communicate with that with the board in any instance that a complaint might come up, but every situation is so different. If there is something of a very serious nature, obviously we would continue to look into it. If it's a violation of other policies or something specific to federal statute, we're going to continue to look into it to make sure that those violations aren't happening in the district. But so it's a little bit different, but we do try to follow the timelines as closely as we can. As I was reading this just a little bit ago, it looked like they'd taken out a 180-day timeline to report something, and it makes it much more close to when the event actually happened so that things are remembered in more detail. So.
Thank you.
And that makes a lot of really good sense also.
Okay, that's all we have tonight on the first reading.
Any questions? Pam, thank you so much.
Yeah, and we'll go back to the committee and we'll work with our DST too on that other for procedures on that one. So.
Thank you. Okay, item 9A, district highlights. Dr. Harder?
Right. Our high school bowling, we appreciate our partnership with the local bowling alley. They put in bleachers, so there's more seating. Last year, there were a lot of audience members, and they were crowded in, and so they had a better place to sit. And so a big thank you to Coach Andy Battenfield. He does a great job coaching our kids. And then inclement weather days, we have 6 of those, and so we would just like to give a big acknowledgement to our maintenance and custodial staff members. They worked really hard to clear sidewalks and parking lots so it was safe for our students, staff, and parents. Corey Nicolette does a nice job of updating us on the progress. And then also we appreciate the work of Michelle Charbonneau, Jasmine Byer, and all transportation department staff members who kept our buses and district vehicles ready to pick up students. And then we're really excited about this. So, Mr. Ayers mentioned that Logan Avenue is nominated for a national showcase. We have 7 of our 9 schools nominated for national showcase. We are very excited and hoping in April to find out. So those schools are Jones Early Childhood Jones Early Childhood Center, Logan Avenue, Walnut Elementary, Village Elementary, Riverside Elementary, Timmerman Elementary, and Emporium Middle School. So this week, as I mentioned earlier, CKH Traction Days, and Mrs. Kinsley visits each of their schools with either Mrs. Stanley or Dr. Mickelson to see what the teachers, students, and staff are doing throughout the day with CKH. They want it to be very authentic and see exactly what they're doing. So greetings in the morning, fist bumps, social contracts, launches, all of those great things. And the schools that have been nominated have principals who have been very engaged in the CKH process, attending monthly cohort meetings and reaching out to Janet for additional resources and guidance to improve their practices. And also, the staff and students in these buildings are actively engaged through CKH practices throughout the day. So that 7 of our 9 schools also gets us closer to being a possible district showcase. So fingers crossed. Thank you.
Next item is item 10A, executive session for personnel.
If you tell me the time. I move we go into executive session for 15 minutes to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel in order to protect the privacy interest of the individuals to be discussed, and to return to this room at 8:02. Superintendent Dr. Allison Harder, Director of Human Resources Mr. Jared Griffin, and KASB Leadership Field Specialist Marsha Weissman are invited to join the session. No action is anticipated.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes.
Motion, please.
It gives me this.
Second.
Oh, wait, Leslie's not here.
Is it something with my phone, or is it? Oh. We can still pass it with 5-0. Is that?
Do we have a second? Okay, okay. All in favor, please, please vote.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you. Jeremy?
Yep, I move we go into executive session for 10 minutes to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel in order to protect the privacy interest of the individuals to be discussed, and return to this room at 8:15. Superintendent Dr. Allison Harder, Director of Human Resources Mr. Jared Griffin, and KASB Leadership Field Specialist Marcia Weissman are invited to join the session. No action is anticipated.
Second.
Can you tell me the time on that again? Are we extending, or are we going into
We're
another?
extending,
Okay, I
we're
missed it. 10 minutes? Thank you.
No, 8:15.
And 8:15?
Do you want our hands? All in favor, please raise your hand.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Turn to regular session.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Please cast your vote. Oh, raise your hand. No, we got it in. Okay, okay.
I was.
We're extending for 15 minutes. Okay, okay.
Motion passes 6-0.
I would also like to note that our board president, Lillian Lingenfelter, has entered the meeting, and we'd like to put her on the roster so she can continue the meeting with us. Is that allowed? Casey, okay.
It is. Let me add her to the roll call here.
Okay.
And then she will be in on the future votes. So
I'm
we've
not
got her
giving
in
up
at-
the presidency, though.
This one will need to be the motion and the hand vote, please.
Oh, we're going back, okay. I move we go into executive session for 15 minutes to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel in order to protect the privacy interest of the individuals to be discussed and to return to this room at 8:34 p.m. Superintendent Dr. Allison Harder, Director of Human Resources Jared Griffin, and KASB Leadership Field Specialist Marsha Weissman are invited to join the session. No action is anticipated.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Hand vote. Raise your hands, please.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank
Return to regular session.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote. He just said.
Motion passes 6-0.
I'm going to make a motion to enter executive session for 5 minutes to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel in order to protect the privacy interest of the individuals to be discussed, and to return to this room at 8:42. KASB Leadership Field Specialist Marsha Weissman is invited to join the session. No action is anticipated.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
I motion to return to regular session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Item 10E, executive session for acquisition of property.
I move to enter an executive session for 15 minutes to discuss potential property acquisition pursuant to the exception for preliminary discussion of the acquisition of real property under coma, and we return to this room at 9 p.m. Superintendent Dr. Allison Harder and Assistant Superintendent of Business Operations Miss Pam Stranathan are invited to join the session. No action is anticipated.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
Yeah, that works. That works. I'm going to get you like a little plaque, like Emporia's best timekeeper.
I move we return to regular session.
Second. Second.
Get it? Mhm.
It's been moved and seconded. I moved it.
Now I can go to the store.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 11A, future board calendar dates. As you'll see, we've added several dates to the calendar. Our next meeting, regular meeting, is on Wednesday, March 12th at 6 p.m. We have a special board meeting on March 26th at 6 p.m. We have superintendent interviews between March 31st and April 3rd, but we'll determine those dates and times a little bit later. We have a regular board meeting on April 9th at 6 p.m. On April 23rd, we have a 5:30 study session and 6 p.m. board meeting. All of those meetings are at Mary Herbert Education Center. And on Wednesday, April 30th at 5 p.m., we have staff recognition at White Auditorium. And item 12A, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion passes 7-0.